Okay, I decided to focus its own video of talking about sexual harassment, and I'm adding in something not in the book about bullying. I know we talked about that a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. Um, these are kind of both, I feel strongly about them because I've dealt with both of them in my workplace. So let's kind of get going here. We know sexual harassment's illegal. It is a violation of Title VII. And it is talking about the explicit or implicit terms of employment. So if somebody is having unwanted sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, other verbal, physical contact of a sexual nature, or creating and imitating hostile, offensive work environment. So it could be quid pro quo, meaning I want some kind of a sexual favor, and then I will give you a raise or extra work days or a bonus or what have you, right? That would be considered quid pro quo. Or a hostile environment. So this could be any type of unwanted sexual behaviors, such as sending a text with a sexual picture or something unwelcomed. So, I had a dentist who definitely crossed these bounds. He would come up behind us and start massaging our shoulders or something to that effect, and you're just thinking, no thanks. I'll have my husband do that at home or whatever. He would just say things about our appearance or something to that effect. And it wasn't necessarily just me. He was kind of like that with everybody. And it just made this environment that made us as women feel uncomfortable. Constructive knowledge is a legal term that means the employer, under the circumstances, should have known about the hostile work environment. An environment is hostile if a reasonable person would find the environment hostile or abusive, and the victim perceives the environment to be abusive. So let's look about this. These are some specific examples of this. Sexually explicit spoken, written, or email communication. So even if it's something where they're sending a meme with sexual contact that, it's just like, send that to your buddies, but the work setting isn't something where that should be shared. So that could be something. Unsolicited, unwelcome flirtations or propositions. The dentist that I was talking about, he always was having issues with his wife, and it's kind of like, well, no wonder you're like this to every female that, walks in the door. But he would flirt with me and, talk to me about my husband and, talk about things that it's like, I don't really want to share with you. You're my boss. Conversation with a sexual content or innuendo. Comments about one's appearance. Unwanted touching. Display of sexually suggestive visual materials. Having... I've never seen this, but I've heard of people that might have some hot woman on the wall, and it's like, no thanks. We're a dental office here. Intrusive questions about the employee's personal life. I kind of talked about that. Descriptions of the harasser's sexual experiences. Use of diminutive terms such as honey, sweetie, baby, that kind of thing where, oh, I'm your coworker. I will say, we did have this one person. We had a front office gal, and she was very largely endowed, large breasts. And she would wear these low-cut shirts. And so she would bend over because she's at the front, and people are kind of looking down on her and just kind of hanging all out, And several of us knew that. And the dentist was so uncomfortable because he didn't want to be the one to say something. He didn't want to be perceived wrong. So he made somebody else go talk to her that she needed to wear higher closed shirts or what have you. there's that. So if this starts to happen to you, unfortunately, so many hygienists don't know what to do about it. I didn't really know how to handle it. Nowadays, I guess I could have Googled it, but back in that time, the internet was still fairly new. It wasn't all. So what you want to just say is say no clearly. So, I'm sorry, that makes me uncomfortable, or something to that effect. Hold the harasser accountable. Document the harassment. One thing that you're going to see similar with both this and bullying is you got to keep a record of what's going on, especially if at some point you do need to file something legally. You have to have specific examples, dates, times, and those who were witness to it. Document your work. Look for others who may have been targets. This is the exact same thing with bullying too. If it's happening to more than one people, then you both have a stronger case. Explore office policy and protocol, and if there isn't something said about sexual harassment, then maybe you need to say, I would feel better if we had a policy. Can we write something up? You can file a complaint and contact an attorney. But once again, if you don't have anything documented, you will not really have a case. So you need to really keep really good records. Okay, then the last thing that I wanted to address, and once again, this isn't in your book, but workplace bullying. We talked about this a little bit, but if you look at this graphic, it says that 6% of people in the workplace are bullied very often. 21% are somewhat often. So we're talking about 27, a quarter of the population that are struggling with bullying. And the reason why I brought this up is because when I first graduated from hygiene school, I was so excited to get my first job. And one of the things that I was excited about is because this dentist, he was leading edge. He had all the latest equipment. I felt like he had really high standards. He was giving me a full hour for my appointment, and it was expected. We did our oral cancer screenings. It just seemed like he wanted us to spend a lot of time educating patients, so I felt really good about it. And so I got hired there, and right away there was an assistant. So here again, I'm thinking, you're below me. And she was a bully. Apparently her friend had been fired or, dismissed or whatever. And I was taking her friend's place. So in order to feel loyal to her friend, she felt like it was her job to make my life miserable. So if I helped out, say, and I like to think of myself as a team player, so absolutely, if I have time, I'm going to help with sterilization, stocking, anything I can do. So if I did, there was something wrong that way, and you're doing it wrong, and, why are you doing this, and, whatever, just trying to make me look and feel stupid. So then I kind of thinking, well, maybe I don't want to. So if I don't help out, then I'm not a team player. I'm a diva. I'm not helping. I don't think I have to do anything. And I mean, it was nonstop. I remember, this might be TMI, but I'd never really had problems, but suddenly I started having irritable bowel syndrome, and what that is a lot of times it can be triggered by stress. And I mean, it was such a hostile environment that I would go out at lunch and I would come back and my stomach, I would just have I would go to the bathroom and basically just stink it up every day because I was so sick and upset about it. And it was so weird. I'm like, I didn't even put two and two together. But once I quit that job, like suddenly it miraculously went away. But it was quite embarrassing for me. So it was physically making me ill. And this went on for months. And I remember trying to address it with a dentist. It was, not really, no big deal. And then it was the weirdest thing. Once somebody new got hired, she started in on them. And she was a bully to them. And I really felt bad for that person. But I knew if I befriended them, she would come back at me. It was I ethically usually stand up for a bully. Like to me, and as I've gotten older, certainly I wouldn't have tolerated that. I've dealt with that as an more advanced in my career, and I'm the first person to be like, yeah, not okay. But at that time, I was so insecure as a new hygienist. I just let that happen, and I was glad that she was focusing on somebody else and not me. How bad is that, right? And that office, I stayed there for maybe a year and a half, which is probably about a year and 5 months too long. But that office had turnover after turnover after turnover. And when I left, I said, you realize that you've had some really good employees leave, and it's due to this person. And just when we would go to him, he wouldn't address it. He wouldn't, he was kind of a pansy. He wouldn't stand up, and so it ended up being a really big problem. And he never had a solve. The only person that stuck around was her. So there's that. So here's some things that workplace bullies do. They can't be trusted. They think it's my way or the highway. I need it now. I said it now. And some people are bullied by their bosses. I've heard of dentists like throwing instruments and you didn't do what I said and yelling or embarrassing you in front of people. If it's another team member, you have the ability to go to the boss and see if it's addressed. But if it's not, if it's the boss, really your only option after addressing it with them and not seeing a change would be to find a new position. This place would close up without me. How stupid are you? You're incompetent. All these kind of things. And, in the case of that bully, she was always conniving with everyone else behind my back, trying to make me look bad or spread rumors or, that kind of thing. So I guess the reason why I feel like I wanted to address this with you guys is because if you find this happening, by all means, you either need to find a new position or address it with your boss and see if they'll address it and if the problem gets resolved. So here's some ways to deal with a bully. Assess the situation, find out everything you can about bullying in the workplace. If it feels like bullying, name it and call it bullying. You're bullying me. Keep a close eye on what's happening around the situation or between you and the person in question. And don't ignore it because it doesn't go away. Build a support network. This says HR, but in offices it's usually maybe an office manager or dentist. Confide in someone so they're aware of you and can look out for you. Like I said, this can take a physical toll on people. Now, just like sexual harassment, document and keep a log of every time you experience the bullying. Write down the date, the time, the name of the person's present so that you have somebody to kind of back you up. If the bullying occurs in an email or any correspondence, keep the email and file a hard copy. And I will say that with sexual harassment too. Keep those things and keep them as records. So it's never fun. You certainly try to address it in office. Sometimes if that happens and it's identified, they'll let that person go. But if not, it might be time for you to find a new office. And so we'll end on that note.